Okay, last week we looked at the queen versus pawn endgames. Okay, and specific some drawing chances that uh, that the weaker king has if it is a rook pawn or it is a bishop pawn. So we'll continue our endgame study. So today we'll look at a concept of key squares in a ending which is a very simple ending, which is one side has got a pawn, the other side has got nothing. So king and pawn versus king. Okay, the simplest of the endings. So let us see. Now
But you had explained key squares to us last class.
someone is saying, I think whoever is there, go on mute. Otherwise, I will have to mute everybody. So yeah, thanks. So yeah, so I think so. First is that this is building on top of the what you have already learned in level two, which is the concept of opposition. If you are having a just a king against opponent's king and pawn, then if you hold the opposition, then you have very good drawing chances. In fact, you can draw. Now what because you are not allowing the opposition, as you remember, the kings are directly facing each other. They do not allow entry to the opponent king, and that's how the opposition works. And whoever has the opposition has got the advantage. So if the a king which has the pawn has got the opposition, then he will force the defending to move to the side and enter and win, right? That is what we had seen. For example, let us take a, let us take a setup position, clear board, and if white is here and white has got a pawn here and black king is here. Let us say if black king is to move, okay, let us take that position. Then black does not have the opposition. White king is to move, then white has got the opposition here. Sorry, if white king is to move, then black has got the opposition because black has just made the king move and now it is white to move. In such a position, if white moves, then he will end up drawing the game because he does not have the advantage. I hope all of you remember very quickly, we'll see it. Whichever side the black white king goes, right? It has to go to the side and it cannot go back. If it goes back, then black king will come one square further up and then anyway it's a draw. But let us say white wants to maintain the thing. So black's king simply maintains the opposition. Okay. Now white has to move the pawn because if he moves the king, then anyway it is going to be, you're not making progress, right? So you have to move the pawn, and at this point of time black goes in front of the pawn and tries to hold the opposition. Okay, so now what white will play, white has got no better move other than playing the pawn further up. Again black will play further down the pawn and try to maintain. Now if a king comes up, black king comes in front of the white king, again opposition, forcing the pawn to move. Now black king goes here, white king goes, let us say white king goes here, then black king will simply go back in the same line. Now whichever side, if white goes here, black king will come in front of him and hold the opposition. Now to break it, white will push the pawn, black will play the king here, and at this point of time white has got no other move other than defending the pawn by coming to say king to e6, and that will always result in a stalemate, right? So this is the thing that we have already learned. I'm not teaching it, I'm just very quickly reviving it. Okay, so what we are learning in this is what does the attacking king need, whoever has got the pawn, what does he need, where should his king be so that he can be assured of victory, right? That you should be able to know upfront, right? Just looking at it. And that is what is the concept of key squares. It is called as key squares. Okay, now key squares, they are defined as long as your pawn. So here always we take example of white, but it matters the same thing for the black also. As long as your pawn is up to fourth rank, which is either second rank, original rank, or third rank, or fourth rank, up to those ranks it is advanced, then the key square is like this, right? If the pawn is there, then two squares ahead of it directly, and then each square to the right and the left. These are called as key squares. if your king, the king which has the pawn, reaches any of these squares, okay, how it is, so pawn is currently on the third rank here, so the key squares are on the fifth rank, two rows ahead, okay, and directly in front of the pawn, and one to the left and one to the right. If white king reaches any of these squares, okay, then it's a win for white. Then black cannot hold it. If black succeeds in preventing white from reaching any of these squares, okay, then black holds the draw. Now there is a very theoretical basis for this. It is not some magic or some automatic formula. Why this is there is, this is very closely tied to the opposition. So if you recall, the only way that in such a position black has got a chance to hold is if black is having his king here on e7. If white king is on e5, black king has to be on e7 to hold the opposition. But because white king is two squares ahead of the pawn, he has got one reserve move of the pawn. The pawn will move from one square, and now it will be black to move. So black will end up losing the opposition. Black will move to one of the sides, and whichever side it moves, or it will go to the edge of the board, and whichever wherever it goes, it will be again white will hold the key squares again. So let us see what I mean by this. Okay, let us see. So let us take a setup. Sorry, not days. Let us go to the beginning of this thing, and oops, let us take a setup position, but not, let us, pawn is not here. Suppose the pawn is here, okay, and it is white. It doesn't matter who is to move. Even if let's give the move to black if he wants, or let us keep it with white. Doesn't matter. Okay, even if it is with white, then also he will simply play the pawn up. Now can you tell any move for black? And I will just demonstrate how it is. I hope it is easy, but you can just suggest a move for black.
King e6.
King
King d6.
King d6, right? King d6. So there now white will not want to simply hold the opposition, because that will not. So white will make progress by bringing up his king. Okay, so now
King d5.
king d5. Okay, king d5, then pawn e4.
If king d4, it's done.
King d4, it is gone. Then the pawn will run through.
What about king c5?
King
King
d6.
c5 also, it is not a
How about
problem,
king
because
d6?
I mean, because white king will further come up in front of the pawn, and now it is, there is no chance now.
What do you play? King d6.
King d6. Let us try king d6 is the most stubborn defense. White will play king f6.
Mm-mm.
King d7.
King d7. Excellent. King d7. Then pawn to e5.
King
King
d.
D8.
King d8 or e8.
D8.
If king
King
e8,
c8.
then king e6, again holding the opposition, right? Again forcing the king to move.
Then
So,
king f8.
King f8.
oh, okay. You want to try out that thing? Okay, let me just. So king f8, it is end of the game, because white king will go to d7. Now he's controlling e6, e7, d7, all the squares. So the pawn will simply run down. In three moves, it has become queen. Right? There is nothing black can do anything more. Simply three pawn moves will make it queen.
Or instead of King E8, what if black plays King D8?
Let us see this. Is that Madhura?
Yes, sir.
Okay, king d8 is the best thing. Now king will come to f7. Now again he's controlling the three squares, e6, d7, sorry, e6, e7, and e8. And now no matter what black does, doesn't matter. In three pawn moves, white will become a queen,
Yeah.
right? So you saw that it is so this is the way. I mean, there is no way that black can defend, okay, in this, because white has lost the opposition. See at this point of time, white had a reserve move. Okay, he moved the pawn and regained the opposition. If the pawn was already in this position and then white was trying to white was to move, then white would have drawn. Okay, there was no way that white would have won it. But because he had this reserve move, now he's making black lose the opposition. That is the whole point. Okay, that is the reason why the key squares are two rows ahead of the pawn, because that two rows ahead means it gives one row spare is there for the pawn to move, okay, and regain the opposition. So I hope you got this now. Huh? It took me some time because nobody taught me. So it took me some time, quite some time to realize why and what. Because then people used to tell me, just some people, experts, used to say, yeah, this is win. I say, how it is a win? They say, oh, no, if the king is opposition also, but king is two rows ahead, then I figured out that, okay, because it has got a reserve move. Okay, so this is the reason. Now only thing is that what I said is that when the pawn is up to fourth rank, that means second rank, third rank, fourth rank, but when the pawn is advanced to the fifth rank, okay, then the key square is not necessarily two rows ahead. Even one row ahead, the three squares in front of the pawn, they are key squares. And why is this? Anyone can can guess? Okay, let me first of all show you this.
Because the black king is at so close to the edge.
Ah, yes, absolutely. Because the black king, defending king, does not have room for going straight back. So he will end up going to the side because he is at the edge of the board. And that is the reason why, in case the pawn is on the fifth rank, then just one row ahead also the king reaches, then it is a win. Okay, let us see this position. Okay, so let me just turn this position around and clear board. Let us give black this time the win. Okay, so let us say the black pawn is on fifth rank. And where do you want to place the king, on d3, e3, or f3? You can choose where you want to keep the king, just for this demo.
E3.
Huh?
E3.
E3?
Yeah.
Okay, e3. And let me keep the white king on e1. Okay, and let us make black move. Okay, so that black is going to lose the opposition. Let us make it as much as thing. So this is the position, and let us say black is to move so that he does not have opposition, but he has got already reached the key square, because this pawn from the black side, when you look at it, it is already on the fifth rank, right? 8 7 6 5 4. 4 means it is fifth rank from the black side, and king is in front of the thing, so it is one of these key squares. So let us say black is to play. Okay, so I will play here now.
King D1.
King d1, right, holding the opposition, but now I will put the pawn.
King E1.
King e1, right? Now I will push the pawn again. See, this is where it comes.
King F2.
Exactly, because king does not have any space to go back now further. So he's forced to move to the side. When he moves to the side, the king comes up and defends the queening square. So next move, the pawn will queen. Got it? So it is, once you realize this, then it is, once you understand the reason why the key squares are the way they are, then it is very simple. Okay. Any doubt? Anyone has any doubt? Anyone wants to try out anything? I play king. You can play any move for white. It is a loss.
King F1.
Okay, king f1. King f1 again. You get this thing idea. This black king will come to d2 now, controlling all the three squares and
Yeah.
queening square.
Yeah, so it's lost.
Lost, right? Even if you go to f2, then also king will come here, and then also he is controlling all the three squares. So there is no real way, basically. Okay, and all of this is possible because the king is on the edge of the board, and you have reached the thing. Okay, but now I will just give a very simple variation of this position, and you have to know this perfectly. Okay, and that is why, so let us set up the board. Now it is very important that the king is in front of the pawn. If there is a very simple change, if the king is not here but here, okay, and if it is, let us say white king is not here, but even if he is here, okay, it is, let us say it is black to move, it's a complete draw then, okay, because you see now the key squares are, the pawn is on the fifth rank, the key squares are d3, f3 and e3. White king is not allowing black any of these squares, right? So what happens is, what will black play now if it is black to move?
So black will play pawn e3, then
Okay,
white will play king e1,
correct,
then black will attempt to move it aside by playing king f3, but
correct.
then black will play king d1 or f1.
No, no, not d1. No, no, no d1. D1 is a loss. King d1, then king will come to f2 and it's a win for black.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so be very, very careful. You have to come in front of the pawn, force black to push the pawn.
And then
White
king.
will go in front of the pawn. Now black has no way other than defending the pawn by going to e3, and then it's a stalemate.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so remember, a slight difference makes all the way. So that's why end games are so important, and so the right way to learn, because you can learn them perfectly. Okay, so now here you know that just looking at this, you should know that this is a draw. Okay, if you are white, then also you know it's a draw. If you are black, then also you know it's a draw, but you will be hoping that white makes a mistake. If white makes a mistake, then it can become a win, but it can never be a
Mhm.
win if white plays accurately. But if you see the previous position, then the king had already reached the key squares, and then it was a perfect win. So if you know this, then at least, even if you don't, even if you can't play this routinely, but at least knowing that this is a win will allow you to think about it and hopefully find it. But actually, this is something that if you practice a little bit, you will get this. Okay, and that is how it should be. End game knowledge should be perfect, and you should be having it. Okay, so I think that was about key squares for the case where there was a single pawn. Okay, any questions on this? We will move on to the case. See, rook pawns are always slightly complex. Complex in the sense that because rook pawns are at the edge of the board, there are more chances of getting a stalemate, right, for the defending king. So this is the theory for the rook pawns. Doesn't matter where the rook pawn stands. Okay, as long as white is not allowing it to be captured, obviously, right? And then what are the two key squares for the rook pawn are the 7th and the 8th on side the side column, which is the knight file, right? On the knight file, the 7th and the 8th squares are the key squares for the king to promote his pawn. If the king can enter these two key squares, in this case, because the pawn is a h pawn of white, the key squares are g7 and h7. Okay, if white can enter these squares, any of these squares, then it's a win, because he will be guiding the pawn to the queening. Just you can see it. If the king is there on either g7 or g8, then black cannot hold the h1 square. Black cannot be anywhere clear near to the h1, and the pawn will queen, right? It is very simple to understand. But if the black king is preventing the white king from reaching this, then no matter what you do, it is a, what is it? It is a draw. Now let us see this. Okay. So let us take a separate clear board. Let us take white pawn on h2. White king, let us say you put it wherever you want to, and black king, I'm just putting it here so that he is controlling the g7. Now let us give the move to white. Okay, fine. Now I will show you how. So black king, because it is controlling the g7 and g8 square, it will be able to force a draw. So you can make a move for white.
G5.
King G5. Okay, then black will simply take the opposition.
H4.
H4. Excellent. Black king will go here.
H5.
H5. Black king will come back again.
Oh, H6.
H6. Black king will again go back to
H5.
King H5.
Yeah.
King H5. So black king will go to H8.
Then G6.
King has to come to G6. Black king will come to G8.
Yeah. How about instead of H7, would it be okay if it's F6?
H7, King H. This is now a draw, right? Stalemate. This will be
Yeah.
stalemate, or you will lose the pawn. But
Couldn't you
what
go to F6?
you want to play King F6?
Yeah.
King F6, then King H7.
Then couldn't you go to G5?
Then you go to G5. Then Black will again go to
Oh.
H8. Right.
Okay.
So no matter what you do now, you go here again. King will come here. You cannot drive away the Black king. See, the thing is very simple. If the Black king reaches on a rook pawn, if it reaches the queening square of the opponent's rook pawn, then in a king and pawn ending, you cannot take away the, you cannot I mean, you cannot force the Black king away to allow queening. He will always get into a stalemate position. Okay, that is the formula actually. So this is the position, because the Black king now, let us go back to the thing. No matter what you do it, or in fact, I will say, I will take out this position and I will say, place the white king wherever you want, absolutely wherever you want.
A1.
Huh? Even?
Oh, I was on black king.
No, I am saying Black king is defending the G7 and the G8 squares. So I'm saying that you can try your heart's content by placing the king where white king wherever you want. It is still a draw. I will give you wherever you want to place the white king, and you get to move.
H3.
H5.
Yeah, H5.
Okay, king H5. Okay, king H5, and again white is to move further ahead. So
H4.
H4. Okay, so Black king will come here.
But actually, instead of H, can you do H6?
King on H6.
Yeah.
Okay, let us take the king on H6
No, for the move to
for the
H6.
move.
Yeah.
Okay. So instead of H4, you want to move king to H6.
Yeah.
Okay, king to G8.
Pawn to H4.
Pawn to H4, king to H8.
Pawn. King to G6.
King to G6, king to G8.
King to G5.
King to G5.
No,
Then
actually, king H5.
okay,
Pawn to
king to H5 again.
no
Then
pawn. No
pawn
pawn
to
to
H5. Okay, pawn to H5 again, king to H8.
king to G5.
King to G5, king to G7.
Check with the pawn.
Check with the pawn, king to H7.
Okay. H5.
King to H5, king to H8.
G6.
King to G6, king to G8.
Pawn to H7.
Pawn to H7, king to H8, and now it's either a stalemate or a draw. I mean, draw by, in any case, either by losing the pawn or giving the stalemate. Right? So this is the trick. This is the trick. So uh, so you should know this. And now, so remember, rook pawn, it is very easy. Seventh and eighth squares on the adjacent file. If you get it, if your king reaches, then then you get a queen and you get to checkmate. If your king doesn't reach, then it is not. This is a similar example, but again, slightly kings are further away from, both kings are further away from the what you call, from the key squares, right? But still the formula holds. Let us see this. Set up the board, clear board. Rook pawn on h2, white king on d5, black king on c7. Now, if it is white to move, white wins. If it is black to move, then black draws. Okay, why? Because black to move will move your king and will deny the square. So what do you want? You want to see how black to play is able to draw? Then let us look at it. Very simple. Black wants to prevent white king from g7 or g8. So black king will come here. Now you play white. King e5, king e5, king e7. King f5, king f7. h4, king g7. King g5, king h7. h5, king g7. h6, king h7. It's still again same position like last time, right? So this is what it is. So if it is white to move, then same position. If it is white to move, then it's a clear win for white, because first thing that I do is I come up here, and now how will black prevent me from getting to g7 or g8? He cannot, because I will come up here, gone. That's it. My king has reached g7. That is enough for me. Now, no matter what you do, you want to go after my pawn? I don't think so. You can catch up with my pawn. That's it. Over. Right? So very, very.
Black should resign.
Hmm?
Black should resign.
No, black should not resign, because you can always get a stalemate. Like, how many of you have given a stalemate in a king and queen versus king position? I have given.
I've,
I'm sure.
I've never even been in a position like that.
Oh, come on. How many games you have played?
400?
And you have never got a king and queen versus king? I mean,
And
not where opponent has simply resigned. Nah? You should not resign, because especially when playing online, playing on time, there are so many mistakes happen. So you can always lose this one.
rock.
I mean, many times. I think I once gave a stalemate to who, I don't remember. In this class only, I have given stalemate, and I was kicking myself. Like, how is that? I had several pawns and something, but I still gave a stalemate. So it happens. So you should never resign. Play to it, but you know that it is a lost game, right? So you are playing for not. You are playing for just for because you have to play it. I mean, till you actually lose it. Cool, fine. Now let me see if I can. Now, in case of blocked pawns, there is a very single. So what we were saying is, now if the pawns are blocked, so this is a different ending. King and pawn versus king and pawn. Okay. Now there is a very peculiar pattern. See, if the pawns are blocked, right, single pawn, and it is blocked, then the key squares are these, as I said, next to the pawn, and then three squares along that row. Okay, which is one row higher than your pawn. So if your pawn is blocked, but it is on fifth rank, then key squares are three squares here, and then there is one more square down. So this pattern again for your own king. If your own king reaches any of these squares, then it's a win. If your king cannot reach the squares, then it's a draw. Now I will leave this as an exercise for you to try it out. Okay, and if you feel that you can think something, you want to challenge me sometime, maybe you can challenge me and we can come on like chess. But this is the theory of it. Okay, this is the theory of the blocked pawns. So in this first position, if it is white to play, then then it is a win for white, first position here. Why? Because what white will do, white will move to e6, get the opposition. Black will have to move the king. Pawns are blocked. Wherever black king moves the other side, white king will go and enter into the one of the key squares, and then it is enough. Okay. So this position is, if white to play, then white's it's a win. If it is black to play, then it's a draw. Okay, then it's a draw. You want to see this quickly? I don't know how much time we have got. No, we don't have enough time to see it. Okay, in the first diagram, yeah, correct. Here, okay. But if it is, what has happened is second diagram is nothing but first diagram with black to play, and black has moved his king up to the opposition. So now this is second diagram is a draw. Okay. Second diagram because white cannot reach it. Okay, maybe you can say the other way around. Actually it is the other way around. Now white, in fact, is it a win for black? Second
Can
diagram.
you show this on the board quickly?
Yeah. Let us see it very quickly. It is G5, G6. Okay. And okay, fine. Set up the board, clear it. Pawn is on G5, black pawn is on G6. Black king is come here, white king is here. Let us say the previous position, black to play. So now it is white to play. Okay, in this position. Now, what are the key squares of black? Key squares of black are F5, E5,
And F5.
E5, and D4. Right? Next to the pawn, one square, second square, third square, and fourth square. White has to defend these squares, otherwise it is a loss. Obviously white king cannot go to d4 because the black king will come to f5 and then the pawn will fall. So white king has to go to where? F4, right? F4. Now black enters one of the key squares. Now it is over. Game is over for white. Play for white. I'll show
King
you.
G4.
King G4. King E4.
King H4.
King H4. King F4.
Gone.
Hmm?
It's lost.
No, still.
So we have chances of winning because we're in
No,
the key
don't
square.
wait. First, learn this perfectly first. Wait, you are losing the pawn does not automatically mean you are losing the game. Are you losing the game? No.
No, sir. We can
So
draw.
you can draw because yes, black will win the pawn, but what are the key squares now? Now the key square pawn is on third rank, not on fifth rank. Third rank means the key squares are two rows ahead on the fifth rank. Now white can take the opposition and prevent black from reaching any of the key squares, though it is a pawn down, but white will hold the draw here. Okay, so remember the key squares for the block pawns are just to see whether what do you call whether it is winning whether the opponent is winning or losing, but after that you still have to, the next battle is there. So do you want to just go back and see what was the position here? Any other move you want to try for white? So one thing is clear, I'm saying that white pawn is falling now. No matter what white plays, the white pawn is lost. But whether the game is lost, I don't know. I don't think so. Game is not lost because white still will hold the draw with opposition.
Sir, the result would be different if the pawns would be on F5, right? or any
No, it
other
will not be. It will not be. So let us put the pawns on. I mean, it will be. Yes, you are right. Let me put the white.
because then there is one
But
more way, right?
yeah, I mean the pawn king, black king cannot come here, right? Black king will have to be not here. Let us say he will have to be here, right? Obviously, he cannot be in check and then nothing. So now let us say if this is the position, then it is again, if it is black to play, then he wins the pawn, okay, but probably draws the game. But if it is white to play, then what happens? Let us see what happens if it is white to play. Oh, we are completely I think what we'll do is we will start the second session, but we will look at this end game again, and then we will go to the live chess study. Okay. Or I'm not sure. No, I will not be able to, because I'm doing it from the Mac, the second one. Okay, so I think we'll cover it again if required. But okay, so now we will stop it, and after a 5-minute break, we will join. I will explain about the how to